I have a commission for another bass guitar, and for this particular commission, I've designed a whole new body for this, just for this client. And I have the mold here in front of me, one side of it stacked on the other and clamped down to my bench because I'm going to laminate the rims. Now, I did a video several months ago, I think, on laminating rims. In fact, there was the video and then an addendum uh, revealing things that I learned and little mistakes I made along the way and trying to get all this to work. So I'm doing everything I can today to avoid all of those mistakes. And I thought, maybe some folks could benefit from seeing what I'm doing to prepare to bend those rims. The first thing I think you need to know is that this thing is really deep. My mold would normally be about 4.5 inches deep, something like that. But the guitar is going to be so deep at the lower bout that my rim has to start out at least 5 inches top to bottom. So I even had to make another 3/4 inch layer of MDF to glue on top of the stacks of the mold. So now I'm developing the systems, maybe I should say the cauls that I need to clamp in here. And it's not quite as straightforward as one might think. So I thought I'd walk you through a little bit of what I'm doing here, and maybe this will be helpful to you in your guitar shop. So I have to make something like 8 gazillion cauls, which when I recalculate comes out to 16. At any rate, I just took a piece of wood. This is an old 2x6. You can use anything, hardwood, softwood, doesn't matter. And I ripped it into a profile that you see here. Uh, it's basically a square cross section, not quite, but basically. And I have beveled the edges back so that as I go around the mold, the various cauls don't interfere with each other by hitting at the corners. And you'll see that a little better later on. And I'm gonna cut these, or I did cut a bunch of these to a length that is equal to the depth of my mold stack. So whatever that would be for you. But just as a point of reference, I made these 1 3/4 inches wide, 44 millimeters wide. For those of you, I keep trying to think of those of you that work in metrics. Um, I forget a lot of times, but and I cut mine 5 inches long. Depth of my mold stack, that's 135 millimeters long. So that was my first step. So now I organize those around my mold, like so. And not too difficult, but you'll find very soon when I change positions with the camera that they are in a specific order. All right, I got those stacked around there, and I made a special one. This one is for the waist. This one sits right in here because I want one in particular that's going to grab a hold of that waist and pull that in nice and tight. So now that I have these done, I find that each one of these has to be coped a little bit to fit that mold. And I'll show you how I'm doing that, and then I'll show you how I arrive at the end result. So you can see that I've arranged these, and I've numbered them because I want them in a specific order. And I've got them stacked all the way around the mold. And you can also see, if you look at those, that they don't fit that mold. You're not going to press that rim together by just pushing on those. So I'm going to cope each one of those. I think you can also see in the camera that approximately where each one of these blocks is, I've put a little mark there just as an indicator of where it rests, so that when I cope it, I know where each block has to go, because I have to keep moving these out of the way. You'll see that in a moment. I'm pointing out also that at the waist, I made this caul and I have already coped it. I did that on a bandsaw and then cleaned it out with my oscillating spindle sander. and I backed it up because I thought it was a little bit too thin right here, but that wasn't too hard to do. That waist is very important. I want to make sure I crowd that right in nice and tight. The other thing I want to point out is that I want the back edge of each one of these cauls to be in such a position, such an orientation, that my clamp is going to get a straight draw from the opposite side of the mold. I don't want to be skewing the swivel head of the clamp and so on. It just makes getting even pressure and positioning the tools that much harder. So now you'll also notice I've numbered them. The red 0 on there is just to show me which side was up, and then I thought, well, you fool, you need to number them too. So I'm going to turn the camera around in some way and try and show you how I go about coping these and then finishing them to the shape that I want. So to actually cope these, what I'm going to do is take them one at a time, and I'm going to raise them up and touch the mold with it. And I'm going to look at this back surface, this flat surface, and try and get it pretty parallel with where the opposite end of the clamp, the opposite jaw, is going to bear, and try and judge that. It's just visual. No need to really measure it, I don't think. But once I get that lined up, I take a short pencil and I reach underneath and I just get a good dark mark on that. You can see there I've marked where that's got to be cut away and coped in. We'll do one more just so that you can see that again. Let's move this out of the way a little. I set that up, and once again, here's my gripping space out here for the opposite side of the clamp. So I'm going to rotate this so that this surface is parallel. So I'm going to lose a fair amount of this. That's why I made these thick, so that I could afford to lose a bunch of it if I need to and still maintain my strength. So is this super accurate? No, I don't think so. See how much that's got to change? So I'm going to finish these around, and then I'll show you how I go about actually forming the cope on the opposite side. To cope all of these is, I'm sure you can imagine, going to be a pretty tedious process. But I think if I want excellent, accurate results, it's going to be worth doing this work. And of course, this will all be reusable for this particular mold again. So I thought I'd show you just my setup here. I selected this block first because it's got to have quite a bit of stock removed from it. I thought the easiest way to do this is to make a block to hold your work nice and square, so that when you're operating in a bandsaw or a sander, you've got your hands out of the way and the work is held in proper orientation. Now I've got a nice angle block here, and it's even got holes in it where I could screw through. But I thought, what if you don't have an angle block like this? Then you'll need to make up something like this. Just 2 scraps, piece of old neck shaft here, no big deal. Put a hole through the back of it right here. Going to hold these together and just going to screw that in. I want to be real careful here. My bandsaw guide is way up, a little bit of bandsaw lesson here. The guide is way up. You got a lot of blade exposed, and that's the reason for having this this block to work with, so that your hands are back out of the way. So here we go. We'll cut one. All right, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to refine this even further. Just a word of caution, whatever screw you select, make sure that it's short enough so that as you cut material away, you're not going to hit that screw and ruin your bandsaw blade. So now, I'm not going to stop the camera, just going to go right over here to the belt sander, and we're going to refine this. I like to use the whole belt when I'm sanding. And there's our finished shape. I finished all of the coping of these little blocks here. I'd say that whole job probably took me between the bandsaw and my belt sander, probably took an hour. Uh, you could, if you wanted to, if you don't happen to have a belt sander, you could probably manage that coping with a hand plane. You'd only have the one line to work with, but I think with a little care, you could create those various radii with a hand plane and maybe brush it up with a little sandpaper. You could probably come as close as I did with my technique. So each one of these is lined with this packing material here. I guess it's a packing material. It's not terribly durable, but it forms a decent enough gasket, a little bit of a cushion so that you can keep that pressure spread out nicely. And you can see I've got clamps on this to kind of give you an idea what the technique is. And I mentioned earlier, of course, I did do a different video on making a laminated rim. You can refer to that if you wanted to watch it. Well, thanks for watching this video. I hope it's been somewhat helpful to the guitar makers out there who have been watching. Um, I do want to report to you that everything that you have seen in this presentation and everything that you have seen in all of the videos that I have ever made have come from me. That is, no artificial intelligence has ever been used. I will admit that I'm not the most intelligent person around, but what you see is genuine, and I'm not allowing any devices, computers, or machinery of any kind to make it all up for me. So thanks for watching. See you next time.